I, as I made in the previous video, had a camera I'd always wanted, which was the Nikon D3S. There's a whole video about that. I'll link it. Maybe it's up here in the corner right now, or maybe it's in that corner. I don't know how YouTube works, but that was a camera I always wanted. Legendary camera. Never thought I'd own it. I finally, by happenstance, got it on trade, and I loved it. Just probably one of the greatest cameras I've ever owned, if not the greatest. I could go on and on about all the spectacular things about the Nikon D3S, but unfortunately, at that time we had just moved into this house. We hadn't been here too long. Not only we're moving into a new house, but my wife, was pregnant, so we had lots of expenses coming up with the new baby, and I was between jobs. I had left one job, hadn't started the other yet, and for financial reasons, I decided that, I needed to sell that camera. And finally, I've been back to working for a while now, and I've been pretty good about saving my money and being responsible. And I was back in the market for another camera. And as much as I like owning cameras just for the sake of owning them and trying out different brands and styles, I knew that I wanted something that I could have long term. In the history of all the cameras I've owned, there have only been a handful that really stand out to me as really, really special cameras for one reason or another, to me personally. One of them, the first camera I ever owned that really struck a chord and stuck with me, was the Pentax K5. I'd owned a lot of cameras before that, but I came across a good deal on that. It was like the Pentax K5 plus a couple of lenses all together for around 300 bucks. And I grabbed that, and I remember just really, really loving that camera. At that time, I couldn't believe how good the ergonomics were, how it felt in the hand, the build quality, the image quality. The cool thing that, similar to Nikon, they had the same lens mount they'd always had, so you could use all the vintage glass without an adapter. Even intuitive little things like the way that it would help you manual focus. Like I remember I'd be rotating the focus ring on a lens, and as soon as it was in focus, without a noise or any fuss, there'd be a little green light that'd come on in the bottom of the viewfinder. It's an optical viewfinder, but it has digital information displayed, and a little green light would just come on, and you'd know, like, oh, I nailed focus on whatever's in the center of the frame. And it made it so fast and so intuitive and so easy. And the weather sealing was great. I took that thing out in so many typhoons and huge storms, and I just loved that camera. And because I was growing and learning and wanting to experience other things, I ended up, just like many other cameras, getting rid of that and looking forward to the next one. But over the years, I've always remembered that camera. Of all the cameras that have come and gone, that original Pentax K5 has stuck out in my mind as a really special camera that I wouldn't mind owning again someday, even if it's just to put on the shelf and to have. The next camera was the Olympus EM5 Mark II. Now that was the first camera I ever bought brand new, and I remember it was a very big deal. I had never gone out and purchased a brand new camera, and that was still a current model. It actually had only been out for maybe a year and a half or 2 years at the time, and it was a very special experience, going to the big fancy camera shop. This one is one that I go to now all the time. I know the people there, we're buddies. But at this time it was a new camera shop, and it's in a rich area of town, like a block away from where the mayor lives, and across the street from the Opera House. And the place looks beautiful, and you go in and everything's just, it's fucking fancy, And being able to walk in to this high dollar rich neighborhood and their top of the line camera store, and confidently be able to walk over and say exactly what I want, and it wasn't the cheapest camera they have, it was the camera and the kit and everything else, and buy it brand new was a special experience for me. And I remember I had done a lot of research before that, because I knew I wanted to buy a camera, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to get. And previous to that, I had always been kind of against the idea of Micro Four Thirds. I had kind of gone into the hype that it was sensor was too small and all that kind of stuff. But despite the fact that my dad's been shooting Olympus forever. But anyway, I got it narrowed down to either the EM5 Mark II or the GX8. And my buddy ended up buying the GX8. So I figured, well, I don't want to have the same camera as my buddy. That's boring. So I bought the EM5 Mark II, and I loved it. Can't say enough great things. If you go through all my videos and watch, you'll probably hear numerous times that I've commented on it and mentioned it and just gushed over it. I love that camera, and that's another one that I will own again at some point, especially because prices are coming down and it's just another used camera now. But image quality, fantastic. Low light was good. I mean, it's micro four thirds, but as far as that goes, great low light. The noise had a very filmic grain sort of quality to it. The image stabilization worked phenomenally well. I just loved that camera, everything about it. But I thought that I was gonna possibly really like the EM5 Mark III when it came out, and I just assumed that that'd be my next camera when it finally came out. And now the EM5 Mark III has come out, and it's made of plastic, and there are just multiple things that they kind of shaved off the EM5 series that I wasn't happy with, but the price stayed pretty high. So that was a bad move, I think, on their part. They made a newer, updated camera that can technically do more, but it's of lower quality and of a higher price. So I'm not interested in the EM5 Mark III. But then the third camera that was legendary in my mind was the D3S, and I hope to own another one someday. But as I was shopping around looking for a new camera and trying to think what really works for me and what's available here to me easily in Taiwan, I ended up actually going out and buying a brand new Canon M6 Mark II. And I had a very hard time deciding between that or the Z50 or even the GR3, because I owned the original Ryko GR, I owned the GR2, and both were good cameras. I actually liked the original better than the 2, and I think I'm the only person in the world who says that. But I thought the GR2 was okay. Loved the GR1. Again, I have so many photos I took with that thing. It really does, after you get used to the form factor, it becomes like an extension of you. That thing is so easy to use and it's pocketable. So the GR3 being even smaller, higher image quality, I was looking forward to that, but you know, at the end of the day, it is a little compact camera with not great battery life, and you can't change the lens, which it's not meant to be changed. But with all those things considered, then you realize the fact that it also doesn't really have usable video, and it's still at a premium price tag, and it was hard to justify that purchase since I was looking for like a more permanent, do-it-all, long-term camera. The GR3, as great as it seems, really doesn't fit the bill. But the Z50, great grip, great viewfinder built in, good image quality, the same or better than the D500 apparently. And I like Nikon colors for the most part. So the Z50 was an option, but here in Taiwan, again, the Z50 was one of those cameras that was hard to come across. I've never actually seen one in person. Nobody had it in stock, and the price was kind of high for what it is. But my camera shop does have the M6 Mark II in stock, and it was for a very good price with a kit lens, and I was able to play with it. And even though it wasn't perfect, I was able to convince myself that it had enough going for it that I should go ahead and buy it, and I could get over or get used to the shortcomings. Let me approach this next thing cautiously. The M6 Mark II is a great camera. I was really blown away with the image quality. Super sharp, which it should be at 32 megapixels, but super sharp, good dynamic range. The low light was actually pretty impressive, especially for an APS-C, especially for a Canon APS-C. Low light was good. The video quality was amazing. I was able to point that thing at myself and it would do the face tracking, and that thing was foolproof. I could dance around, stand on my head, do backflips, whatever else. I didn't actually do that because I can't backflip, but basically no matter what I did, that thing would stay locked on. There was no jumping back and forth, there was no searching. Like, it knew where my face was, where my eye was, and it would lock on and wouldn't let go. And of course, the straight out of camera quality, the colors in the video looked great. So as far as the image quality goes, very happy. The video quality, very, very happy. But I found myself never using it. I even bought the Sigma 16mm f1.4 to go with it, and that was really up to, it like doubled the value of the camera. As good as that camera was, having that Sigma 16 on there was like a game changer. I can't say enough good things about that lens. As a matter of fact, I might have liked that lens more than the camera. That was a really fantastic combo, and I highly recommend it to anybody considering it. Really fantastic combo. APS-C or not, wide angle or not, I was getting legitimate, like, shallow depth of field. I would have that thing pointed at my face vlog style doing a video, 16mm f1.4 open, you know, wide open, and the Christmas lights in my office over there that are behind me, about 6 or 7 feet behind me, were just giant bokeh balls, all blurry, and it just had gorgeous rendition. Also immediate, fast, foolproof autofocus, totally silent, great combination. But anyway, what I found was that I was never using the camera though. And I work a lot and I'm busy a lot, but even when I was at home with a family or going out places, I would try to remind myself to take the camera, and I just wasn't really using it. And as the weeks went by, I was starting to feel worse and worse that I wasn't using that M6 Mark II, and I was trying to figure out why it wasn't clicking and why I wasn't really into it. And I realized that for me, as you've probably picked up on some of my other videos, as much as I think tech specs are cool, and in some cases they can be very useful and even needed depending on what you're doing, that's not the be-all end-all. A spec sheet is not what makes a camera. And as impressive as the spec sheet was, and as very capable as that camera is, for me personally, I didn't like using it. I like a viewfinder. You don't need to have a viewfinder. Like I said, I've owned the GRs, a couple of GRs, and those don't have viewfinders. But for what they do, they're not needed, right? But for my everyday camera, the intuitive nature, the enjoying, getting into the moment, taking a photo, wanting to, like, that mindset you have to be in to create this memory, or however you want to put it. For me, I need a viewfinder. And I know not everybody's that way. I know especially with this generation of people that are kind of, everything's done through their smartphone, whether it's taking photos, taking video, taking in content, photo editing, video editing, whatever, everything's on their smartphone. So a lot of people now are pretty used to the idea of composing a shot at arm's length on the back of a screen, like on a smartphone screen. And I can, but I don't like it. I just can't get into it. Like, I can't connect with the moment the same way. But there's something about putting your eye up to a viewfinder, having your arms here, the shutter being here, everything being blacked out, and only seeing this moment the way your lens sees it. There's just something about that makes that connection subconsciously with me, and it really gets me in the moment and makes me want to shoot and makes me want to go out and use my camera. And the fact that the M6 Mark II didn't have a built-in viewfinder was really a bummer for me. And the fact that I have to spend a few $100 and order, because they don't have it in stock anywhere in Taiwan, I have to spend a few $100 and special order a separate viewfinder for that camera, and then I'd have to take up my hot shoe and all these other things was a bummer. And the other thing was the ergonomics. It's just not a very good grip on that camera, and I tried to solve that. I bought one of those small rig video cages that has a grip built onto it, and that helped, but still wasn't ideal. Then the tilting screen. I'm a fan of either a fully articulating screen or a screen that doesn't move at all. And again, I know I'm maybe in the minority with that, but for me, either I want the screen to not be touch sensitive at all and just to be flat on the back of the camera like my D3S or my K5 or various other cameras I've had, so that I don't have to worry about accidentally touching things. I don't have to worry about it being overly sensitive to damage. It's built in, tough, and it's there to check the menus when I need to. Or I like a fully articulating screen. And it's not, I don't know where this idea comes from that fully articulating screens are only good for selfies or for YouTube vlogging. My favorite style of screen is fully articulating, and it has nothing to do with YouTube vlogging or anything else. As a matter of fact, a majority of my vlogs have been done with a cell phone, and I don't even use the selfie cam. I would have my cell phone, actually, here's my phone here. I would be using the back camera of my cell phone because it's better quality, and I'd have it pointed at me like this, you know, out here, so I can't even see the screen. I just assume that I'm in the frame, and I was usually right. So fully articulating screens have nothing to do with selfies. For me, the reason why I love fully articulating screens is because for photography, I was able to do what I wanted to do better. And I've tried to explain this in comment sections or in YouTube videos, and I never quite explain it correctly. But the best way I can say it is, well, one, with a fully articulating screen, because I never chimp, and it's not a pompous, like, oh, I don't do that. It's just, I don't want to stop and look at the photos I just took. For me, I actually like not seeing the photos until much later, kind of a throwback to when I shoot film, right? It's just what I enjoy. So I never chimp, I never need to go through the menus 10 times a day. I don't really need to see the screen. So with a fully articulating screen, I like to be able to flip it around and shut it so that it's not showing at all. It's just a flat, non-screen back, kind of like a film camera. I like that. Not only does it technically protect the screen, but it's not getting dirty, it's not getting smudged, not getting scratched, and I'm not touching anything by accident. And I just like aesthetically the way it looks to not have a screen in the back of the camera. But the other big deal is that with it in that closed position, the screen facing in towards the body, I can do one of my favorite things. I did it all the time with my EM5 Mark II, is I can hold the camera upright with the shutter technically up away from my palm. The shutter button up here, you know, the grip up here, and the lens side of the camera down in my palm. I can hold it like that, and I can take the screen and pull it down so that it's at a 90-degree angle to the camera body sitting straight up and the screen now sticking straight back like an L shape. And I can hold it down at my waist and down by my belt. And I can look down at my waist and look down on the open screen just like I'm looking at an old TLR film camera. And I can see a scene, you know, rotate my hips nice and steady, get that lower point of view that I like. And then when I'm on the street or in an area with my family or anywhere else, once I see that shot that I want, that portrait orientation, you know, upright, kind of medium format style, looking down my waist like it's a TLR, lower point of view, which is an unusual perspective, so it kind of lends a new view on things. Once I get that shot that I want and that scene that I want, I don't have to think about it, I don't have to do anything special. I just take that same thumb and I reach over and I touch the screen. If I see my son in a scene, I can just reach over and touch his face, and it automatically focuses and takes the shot at the same time. So it's very discreet, it's very comfortable, it's very steady, it's a new, different perspective, it's that upright area. It's very fast and easy. I don't have to flip the screen around because I already have the screen shut, so I can just pull it down and it's in that position. I just touch and it takes the shot. Everything about it is just so perfection for me as far as what it does. And then the M6 Mark II just has a tilting screen, and I hated that. I hate tilting screens. Like I said, I want it to be non-articulating, non-touch sensitive, or I want the full bang, fully articulating, touch sensitive, all those things. So while I was wrestling with this, like, man, I just spent money on this camera and now I'm not using it, I came across another deal on another camera. And as you saw in my last video, it was the Sigma DP0. And I'd always wanted to try a Sigma camera, always wanted to try the Foveon sensor. And this one was that, you know, 21mm equivalent because it's got a 14mm lens. And it was super cheap. The guy wanted $300 for it, and it came with the viewfinder kit and everything else, and I jumped on it. So grabbed that camera, started taking test shots at my house, like in my office, even in the dark. took it up into the mountains with me for a day. I actually hopped on the back of my, I hopped on my motorcycle, put that in a bag, and I took the M6 Mark II, which is what I used to film that whole video. The M6 Mark II I just used as a video camera to film that Sigma video, the DP0 video, and all the photography came from the Sigma. And that was actually a pretty good combination. Using the Canon M6 II as just a video camera, because that's kind of its specialty function and I don't have to worry about the ergonomics of the photography side, that worked out great. And the video looked good. And the photos coming out of the Sigma were also great. But I also knew that although the Foveon sensor is fun, it's not a practical camera. Again, it can't change the lens. It's got a weird ergonomics. It's kind of fussy about what situations you can or cannot use it in. It was a fun thing to experience, but it's not the camera I want to keep. So what I did was after I used it for literally, as soon as I got that camera, I remember I got the Sigma, and as soon as I got home, I took photos of it, like product photos of everything I had bought, and I posted it online for sale because I figured maybe in the next few weeks or few months I might get a bite on it. So as soon as I got home, posted it for sale, and then I went out to the mountains, you know, and while I was in the mountains, somebody sent me a message saying, like, I want the camera. So one day after I got that camera, I got back from the mountains and I boxed everything up and I shipped it off. So I had that Sigma for exactly one day. It was just long enough to take some test shots, take some video of it, go on a little adventure, and go. Then that's part of the reason why the video that I did for that Sigma wasn't better. It was very much like, here, I did one trip, got some initial impressions, got some hands-on experience, and so long, goodbye, no more Sigma. But I actually made a profit on it. I made an instant, less than 24 hours, I made an instant profit of $200. So I got my 300 back plus 200 extra. And I thought, okay, well, I have the same 300 I started with. Now I have 200 I didn't have before. I wonder if I can do that again. I wonder if there's another camera I can just play with as maybe a review camera that's like an old forgotten camera I can get for maybe that $200 I just made. And that's when we come to the subject of this video. I know it's taken a while to get here, but I came across a camera that I've always wanted to try, not because I think it's perfect, but because it's kind of legendary, and everybody seems to like it for one reason or another, and that is this. The Canon 5D Classic. The Canon 5D Classic is one that I always wanted to try because not only is it technically full frame, and I've owned a lot of full frame cameras now, but when I first got interested in this camera, I'd never owned one. So I always thought, wow, a full frame camera for a more affordable price, that's cool. But over the years, I've done more and more research, and I'd hear these stories about how Canon worked with Kodak side by side. They co-developed the sensor, and that the straight out of camera images for this are tuned to look very similar to Kodachrome. And of course, like most people, I'm kind of obsessed with the legend of Kodachrome. So that Kodachrome legend involving this camera automatically always interested me. And also it being affordable was always a big deal. So I knew I always wanted this camera, and I knew that when the price was good enough, I would get one eventually. I just didn't want to gamble with anything less than basically something I could afford to lose. And Matthias Berling did a video on this, and even he was going on about the colors. He was saying, you know, look at this. I just add a slight contrast adjustment and it's perfect, you know? So I came across this, and I was able to buy the Canon 5D Classic, which is in really good condition. As a matter of fact, if you look at most of the camera, it looks like it's brand new. The only places you see anything wrong with it is if you look at this bottom corner here, you can probably see that there's a scuff, and same thing on the other side where the battery goes in, there's a little scuff. But I was able to get the 5D Classic and then a little nifty 50 1.8 lens for a combined total of $200 through some haggling and wheeling and dealing. And what I realized was that as soon as I picked up this camera, the first thing that struck me was like, wow, this has really good build quality. And that shouldn't be surprising, because when it was new, it was a professional full frame camera. But for some reason that just doesn't translate well in photos and videos. Every time I've seen somebody make a video review of this, everybody talks about the good build quality and how it feels rugged and robust and it's built like a tank. Mattias Burling said the same thing. Everybody says that, but for some reason, maybe it's just the styling or the subtle little nuances that you subconsciously pick up on, but in videos it doesn't look like it's a particularly rugged camera. I always expected it to be kind of light and plastic-y. But as soon as I picked this up, it felt very dense and hefty and heavy and very rugged, and I was actually surprised, like, wow, this actually is a really rugged, well-built camera. The other thing is, classic Canon, it's got a good grip, good ergonomics. The shutter button is right where it's supposed to be with your finger. And then right above that, it's got a little wheel that rolls around. I've got my display screen on the top, which I've always liked. I've got the wheel on the back, which I've always liked. It's even got a little nubbin, and these days we call that a joystick, which on new cameras is a really big deal. Look, it's got a joystick. And the 5D Classic had one. You know, everybody talks about the screen being kind of useless because it's so small and so low res, but I'll actually turn it on here. If I push the playback button on here, let me see, maybe a brighter photo that's easier to see. The screen, I don't know how well it shows up on this video, but it's actually plenty bright. It's not dim, it's plenty bright. You can adjust the brightness, and because it's smaller, even at the lower resolution, it doesn't look low quality. Again, it's technically low res, but it's on a little 2.5-inch screen, so the pixel density ends up being good enough, and I don't see anything wrong with this screen. It actually works just fine. It's better than people let on, in my opinion. But anyway, what I realized with this camera was that even though I had my M6 II, I was always using this. And it's not because I was trying to use this or I thought it was better or I wanted to do a review, but it's because I enjoyed it more. This feels better in the hand. This feels more secure. This has a built-in viewfinder. This is just more confidence inspiring and it's more intuitive. And after a while I realized that even this being a 15-year-old bare basics DSLR, I was loving using this camera, and I still really like using it. As a matter of fact, I've been throwing it in my backpack and taking it with me everywhere I go, even to work. So some of the videos or not videos, but some of the photos you've been seeing come up on the screen, a lot of them look like they were taken from a car or a truck, and that's because I will be in my truck driving from one job to another at work. And if I see something on the street that I like or something interesting, or just a scene where I thought, oh, those are some cool colors, I wonder how the 5D Classic will render those colors, then I'd lift the camera up out of my bag and right through the windshield or through the side window, I'd take a photo. So that's why you see so many photos popping up that look like they were taken from a car, because they were. But what I noticed was that just like with my D3S, 12 megapixels is more than enough. And I'm not saying that as a sales pitch. I mean, really, of course, when getting something in focus is important, but as long as whatever you're taking a photo of is in focus, you can zoom in and crop and do whatever you want, and there's no problem. There's no problem with cropping. Obviously, you're not going to crop in 500% and still end up with a high-res photo. That's insane. But if, like, most of the photos I took with this have been cropped, actually. They're not the original 12 megapixels. Because they were being shot from a truck, I'm cropping out the window frame, or I'm cropping out this distracting thing on the street. So most of the photos I'm showing are cropped. The other thing is, this is a very old sensor that's supposed to be bad at high ISO, but with only a 51.8 and challenging lighting conditions and shutter speeds and everything else, a lot of the time I had this thing cranked up to 1600 ISO, and even at 1600 ISO and cropping in, the photos looked good. They looked very fine. As a matter of fact, I think if you check the DxO test charts, which again, I don't worship DxO and I don't think they're the be-all end-all. I think they get a lot of stuff wrong, but they are an interesting reference point to see at least how things compare, all things being equal. The the 5D Classic to this day, I think if you search the top rated sensor for an APS-C camera according to DxO, currently the highest ranked APS-C sensor is the D7200, or maybe it's the 7500. It's a Nikon D7000 series camera, and it has the highest sensor rating. And if you look side by side and compare the ratings, it shows that even though at base ISO, the APS-C, the modern APS-C camera has better performance, when you start looking at things like dynamic range or color depth or ISO performance, things like that, in many cases, especially as the ISO goes up, the 5D Classic still technically tests out to be better. So although it's nowhere near the same quality as modern full-frame cameras, it can still hold its own. And many people shoot modern APS-C cameras and they boast about how it's beautiful, phenomenal, fantastic image quality, and they don't need full frame and they don't care about full frame, and they can do professional work. And sports, action, wildlife photographers, JPEG straight out of camera from their APS-C camera looks great, you know, no problems. And technically, this has better image quality, according to DxO in some categories. So especially if you were to put professional lenses on here, better glass, keeping the ISO lower, not cropping so much, all those things only add to the experience. They only make the image quality even better. What I can say is that, again, I gotta be careful about my wording here, because sometimes I go back and I watch my own videos and I realize that because I get lost in thought, I'll just straight up use the wrong word, or I'll stumble over my own speech, and I sound like a real idiot. And I think, oh, why did I say that? So let me be careful here. I will say that in some ways, the 5D Classic is a bit overrated. Using it was not a coming to Jesus, holy grail sort of moment. It like some people describe it as, it wasn't this like, oh wow, this is what I've been missing. Dude, I'm gonna be honest with you, I've owned a lot of cameras, and I'm pretty used to camera stuff in general, and it's hard to impress me when it comes to cameras. So this was not a life-changing experience for me. But I will say that in other ways it exceeded my expectations. I did not expect the build quality to be this good. It is actually a fantastically built camera. The ergonomics feel great. Not as good as my D3S, but there's obvious reasons for that. But the ergonomics feel great. The image quality is actually very, very good, better than I expected actually. The colors are gorgeous and wonderful and beautiful. However, they're not Kodachrome. I don't know who started that rumor. I don't know how true it is, but they're not Kodachrome colors. They are great straight out of camera, but just like with anything else, I prefer to tweak them some. I prefer to edit the photos to my taste, because I tried side by side, just straight out of camera colors, and then I'd take the exact same photo and I'd duplicate it and I'd say, okay, straight out of camera, but I'm gonna add some contrast adjustments like Mattias Burling did. And then I'd take another one where it was the same image replicated, and then I'd edit it and tweak it as much as I wanted, just like I'd do with any photo. And I always liked my edit better. So it's pros and cons. It's a full frame camera, and the benefits to that, even beyond image quality or things like that, the benefit of a full frame camera for me is that there's no equivalencies. There's no math to do. There's no change in viewing angles. If I put a 35mm lens on this camera, it's 35mm. If I put a lens with an f1.4 aperture on here, it's an f1.4 aperture. There's no games, there's no tricks. So just like using a film camera, it's very convenient. This lens is this lens, and that's what it is. It's comfortable to use. It's rugged and tough. I have never worried that it's gonna, get damaged. The image quality is very good. But I think all things aside, my favorite thing about this camera, and I can say this completely honestly, is that it is really enjoyable to use, at least if you're a guy like me. For me, this camera really reminded me of why I like photography. It was a very, if it makes sense, it was a very pure photography experience. Some of the things that people would consider downsides, and I guess they technically are, again, based on spec sheets and stuff, or what you might need personally, to me kind of added to the character and the appeal of this camera. The fact that there is no live view function, again, I don't use that anyway, so to me that was not a downside at all. It was a nice little perk. I know you might be thinking, it's not a perk, you can turn off live view on any camera, and that's true, I'm not arguing with you at all. But the fact that, again, some people would consider it a downside because they like using live view and composing off of this screen. For a guy like me who keeps the screen turned off on all of my cameras all the time, having this always black and not having a live view was great. Nice for me personally. I enjoyed that simplicity, being that this is the base built-in function of this camera, and it just so happens to suit my needs perfectly. The fact that there was no auto ISO, while initially a little bit of a bummer because I always use auto ISO most of the time I use it, it actually was only a bummer for about 3 seconds. As actually a matter of fact, let me back up a little bit. Instead of going through every single little thing and telling you how I feel about it comparatively, I think the best way to summarize this camera is to say it is a digital film camera. Quite literally, digital film camera. Which makes sense because this was back when they were still transitioning from film, and digital hadn't taken on its own life and characteristics yet. But as a guy who shoots both film and digital, I would say this camera is the perfect embodiment, the perfect representation of a film camera that has a digital sensor inside of it. The build quality, the ergonomics, and the feel is just like holding an old Canon SLR film camera from like the 90s, right? Like one of those EOS 1s or EOS 3s or EOS 5s, right? Feels like a film camera in the hand, a modern SLR style film camera. The fact that there's nothing back here, there's no live view, none of that, means that you're never looking back here during your day, like shooting, unless you like to chimp. So that is like a film camera. The fact that you should always, with ISO, it has a native ISO up to 1600, but has an expandable ISO up to 3200. That's like a film camera. Most film cameras always use film with lower ISOs because it's better quality. But if you ever technically needed a higher ISO and you didn't care about the grain, you could put 1600 ISO in your film camera, or even 3200 ISO in your film camera. But there was really nothing beyond that. If you needed anything higher, then you were pushing your 3200 ISO film. So that's like this. It goes natively to 16. You can push it to 32. But yeah, the ISO selection and choices you have are like a film camera. And even the grain that you get at the higher ISOs is not this nasty chromatic shit. It looks very filmic. And the fact that there's no auto ISO, you have to just select the ISO you want, is just like a film camera. If I'm going to put film in my camera, I have to decide, oh, what film do I want to use, what ISO, whatever, and I put it in my camera. Of course, the benefit here that you get from a digital perspective is that, unlike a film camera, I can decide that I want to go out and shoot with 100 ISO film, but instead of having to shoot all 24 or 36 of those shots before I can change it, if I suddenly find a situation where I need 400 ISO, I can just hit this little ISO button right here and switch it over to 400. So it gives me that digital benefit of instantly changing if I need to. I can change back and forth to whatever ISO I want as often as I want, which is one of the benefits of a digital camera. It also gives me the benefit that I can rack up as many photos in here as I want. It's got, the card right here, so I'm not limited to the roll of film. I can fire off thousands of photos and wait weeks and weeks before I look at them, or look at them as soon as I get home. That's the benefit of digital. I can also take them into Lightroom and tweak them and twist them and do whatever I want to them. That's the benefit of digital. And if I did want to chimp, I can push the playback button. Oh, let me turn it on. I can push the playback button and I can see my image, and I can even hit the little magnify button and I can zoom in basically forever, as much as I want. And I can chimp if I want to, and that's one of the benefits of digital. So they say, well, it doesn't have auto ISO. Neither did film cameras. Well, it doesn't have live view. Neither did film cameras. Doesn't have video function. Neither did film cameras, unless it was a cinema camera. This is basically a film camera that doesn't take film. It has a digital sensor. And I would say if you are an older guy or even a younger guy or girl who shoots film always primarily, and you're looking at dipping your toes in digital for some of those conveniences, you're probably going to love this camera. If you are primarily a film shooter and that's what you're familiar with, or even if you haven't shot anything, if you have not owned a camera in a very long time, but you have memories of the days when you used film and the new cameras seem overpriced and over complex and full of all these fucking features you don't need, I totally get it. This is a great camera for you. It still has a place. I promise you, you're not going to be disappointed with the image quality. It's not going to feel low res. It's not going to feel like low quality. The colors are great. Contrast is great. The detail is great. You can print out photos and blow them up real big. I think Ken Rockwell, of all people, has his old original and even updated reviews for this camera. And he talks about having a giant, like 5 foot wide photo hanging on his wall that he took with his original 5D. And it looks sharp, like you can put your nose to it. It looks great. So there's no, when it comes to image quality, there's no shortcomings here. You have a Canon full frame sensor with any amount of professional level glass you want to put in front of it. You will be so happy with the image quality. You just don't have things like auto ISO, ISO up to 100,000. You don't have video mode. You don't have Wi-Fi. You don't have a giant, enormous, fully articulating touchscreen. You don't have all these extra features that have become commonplace in the digital world. But if you don't care about those and you don't need those and you just want a rugged, reliable, take it anywhere, anytime, will last forever camera that has the benefits of and conveniences of digital, has all of the perks of professional image quality, has an unlimited supply of lens options, even very cheap vintage lens options, and you don't have to invest any more money, and you don't have to go out and buy 1 billion extra batteries. You don't have to buy film. You don't have to pay for lab fees. You can just have this one camera that will take the abuse and keep on going. You can put any lens on it and you'll have professional image quality, and it's just taking photos. It's your digital film camera. It just takes photos and it does it well. This is a fantastic camera. Well worth the money if you don't spend too much on it, but your mileage may vary. You might decide that to have those conveniences and to have that reliability is worth $500, or you might decide that it's not worth $100. It's up to you. I said I paid $200 for the combo, and I feel like it was very worth the money. I can't recommend it enough. But anyway, I work like crazy all the time. Typically, I work between 12 and 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. Having a day off is rare. Today I have the day off, so I was able to finally make a video. So I'm sorry that I can't have more interesting photos to show you. Most of them were boring photos that I took from the inside of my truck at work. I also can't post as many videos, or I can't, if I do post a video, I can't spend as much time or effort on it. It is what it is, but I did notice though, as I look through my analytics on YouTube, that some of the videos, my videos that are the most popular, ironically enough, are the ones where I'm just being myself. And I don't mean, like, I've never not been myself in a video, but I've I've done so many different kinds of videos, just playing around and experimenting, seeing if I like a certain style or I like a certain thing, and seeing if something clicks with me. And some of the videos that I do are just like this. I stand right here in my living room. I have a window light hit me in the face. I just talk to the camera for a while. Might show some photos on the screen. And nothing is scripted. Nothing is thought out. I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know how the conversation is going to go. I don't know how long the video is going to be. I just talk to you for a little bit and give you my honest opinion about things. And I always expected that those videos wouldn't get any views and they'd probably get a lot of thumbs down and nobody'd like those videos because it's boring and who am I and why do you want to listen to me and it's too long. But somehow, according to the YouTube analytics, those are actually my most successful videos. The videos where I'm just standing in my living room and being real with you for a little bit, just talking to you, as long and boring as they are, those are my most successful videos. They have really good audience retention and they get a lot of thumbs up and people like them and they share them and they comment. And by the way, I really appreciate the comments. I try to avoid talking about my YouTube stuff too much because I don't want to be that guy. I never ask anybody to like or subscribe to my videos or to my channel. That's not why I do YouTube. But to take 2 seconds and address that whole thing, I really do appreciate your comments. You'll notice that if you leave me a good comment and I give it a heart, you know, like I love the comment, if I don't reply to you, it's not because I don't appreciate what you said. It's because despite me from time to time staying in front of a camera and kind of rambling for a bit, by nature I'm a quiet guy. By nature I mind my own business and I do my own thing. I just watch and I listen. Even when I'm standing with a group of friends and we're all talking, I'm usually listening to them talk and I'm just kind of taking it in and forming an opinion and thinking, you know, that sort of thing. Smile and nod. I don't feel like the world becomes a better place because I graced people with my voice. You know, I need to say something. I don't feel that way. So it's just not the way my brain works. It's not the way I tick. So I've seen so many really wonderful, great comments from you guys. Some of you are subscribers, some of you aren't. Some of you I've seen make comments before, other ones are new people I've never noticed, but either way, I see a lot of really good comments. Some of them are very long and they're very well worded and they're very well thought out, and I love reading them. I really do. Like when I get a new comment, I'm like, oh, a new comment. And some of them are long, and I actually like sitting and going through and reading the whole comment and seeing what it is you have to say to me and telling me about your own experiences with either family or travel or photography and your experiences and opinions with cameras. I actually really enjoy reading your comments, believe it or not. I read all of the comments. I read the entire comment from start to finish, and I really enjoy it. And so many times I will see a comment and I will really appreciate that you took the time to write it, and I really enjoy the comment itself. And I agree with you and I like it, and I hit the heart button. Yeah, cool. And I feel a little bit bad, like maybe I should be saying something back, but that's just not my nature. I don't want to just have the same generic, hey, thanks for the comment, to every single person, because I feel like not only is that kind of generic, but it also maybe would leave a bad taste in your mouth. Maybe it comes across as disingenuous. At least for me personally, I always prefer, it's kind of like when your parents say, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. I always feel like when I leave a comment on somebody's YouTube video, I would rather you just not respond to me than to respond to me with the same copy and paste generic, thanks for watching, blah, 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 blah. It's like, oh, dude, come on, don't be a dick. Like, if you don't, just don't comment. Like, don't respond. So if I'm not responding, it's not because I don't care. I love your comments. I just, a lot of the time I read it and I smile and I'm happy, but I don't have anything to add to it other than to say, like, I agree with you. That's well thought out. I like your comment. Like, that seems weird to say that, so I just don't say anything. But anyway, as usual, sorry if this is too long or too boring. I hope you were able to get something from it. as far as people curious about the 5D and the Canon 5D Classic in 2020, 2020 is the year of hindsight. So in the year of hindsight, looking back at the 5D Classic, I'd say I highly recommend it if you want a pure photography experience. If you are the type of person who used to enjoy or still enjoys shooting film and all you care about is the pure experience of photography, I very highly recommend the camera. If you are looking for something to be a modern day workhorse that can serve you for sports and action and all these other things, it's not the best candidate. It can do it technically, but it's not really a good candidate for that. If you need it for video, obviously not a good candidate. It doesn't shoot video. So I'm not going to give you that generic, like everybody should try it, because they shouldn't. A lot of you would try this camera and you'd probably hate it. But there's also a lot of you that would probably fall in love with this camera and it might become your new everyday camera. I actually before I bought the camera that I'm recording this with, which will be a different video, different day, I actually considered just keeping this and just making this my full-time permanent camera. It's only by happenstance that I happened to come across another very rare opportunity to finally get this camera I'm recording the video with, that I ended up buying this camera. But I reached the point where I thought, you know what, this does everything I needed to do. Really, I never, even though it does like a multiple shot burst, like I never use burst modes. I don't care about the video function. I don't need touch screens or live view or any of these things. I just kind of need a camera that'll take photos, and this does it. So anyway, I keep rambling. I'm having a hard time stopping. It's like I've opened a purge valve. But thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your comments. I hope you've all had a wonderful 2020 so far. Hope you're having a wonderful day, and if not, hope it gets better. I mean that genuinely. My family is big on family. We have our problems and our issues, but we love each other and we try to support each other. And I've always believed in quantity over quality. I don't have a lot of friends, but the friends I have are real friends, and I do anything for them. And I just believe in treating people well. And even if you don't know somebody, you want good things for people. My dad had a cousin, and the guy passed away. His name was Steve Varnador, and my dad's cousin. And he had a tough life. He was in motorcycle gangs and got running with bad crowds throughout the 70s and this and that. And so later in life he had health issues, but he was a sweet guy, especially as he got older. And he always used to say, like, especially on Facebook, as he found Facebook, he'd comment on things. He would say, "Love ya, mean it. Love ya, comma, mean it." And just that little added to the end. It's not just a generic, oh, you know, okay, love you, yeah, I love you too. It's like, I love you, and I mean it. Like, really, I love you. Love you, mean it. That was what he was known for. And that's what we think of when we think of Steve. We still think, love you, mean it. And that was special. And when I say something like, I appreciate your views, or I appreciate your comments, or I hope you're having a good day, I'm not saying it as a trendy little, you know, fucking YouTube approved. I mean, really, I don't know you. But I honestly appreciate the fact that you're watching my video and that you're able to listen to me talk about the dumb things for a while. I really do hope that whoever you are and wherever you are, that you're having a good day. And if you're not, I really do hope it does get better. I hope you have a great year. I hope good things happen for you. We need more good things. So anyway, I'll talk to you all later. Again, thank you for watching. Until next time, I'll see you.